Kia ora tātou. Last week was a big moment for Te Ao Māori and for Aotearoa New Zealand as well. At the Koroneihana, it represented a year of grieving ending for Te Arikinui Kuini Ngawai hono i te pō, and an opportunity for her to speak in public for the first time, to lay out an agenda, a manifesto, a kaupapa for the kingitanga, but also that would be influential for Te Ao Māori and for the country as a whole. And it was much looked forward to. It was a time of intergenerational change. Historically, it's a big moment as Māoridom shifts a generation of leadership, and what we would learn from that, what we would understand from that, and where we might be going with that. And so here are 5 lessons in leadership from the speech. In leadership, we don't exist merely to resist. We all grew up with Ranginui Walker's seminal work, Ka Whawhai Tonu Mātou, Struggle Without End. It informed a generation of Māori leadership. It was the tale, the narrative of colonisation, of the oppression of our people, and of our resistance to that colonisation, to those processes. And it's influenced us. It influences the curriculum of universities. It influences so much thinking today as well. And it's incredibly important, and it's a truth that we live out constantly. Te Arikinui is a product of this education. And she had a very strong criticism of this government. Kua tini, kua mano ngā kaupapa Māori, kua whakaurupātia i tēnei kāwanatanga. Kua ki te urupā o tēnei kāwanatanga i te kaupapa Māori. Many are the causes of Māori that have been buried by this government, and that the graveyard is full of Māori causes due to this government. It's a stunning, visceral critique of this government's work. And yet, rather than merely following this playbook of resistance being the only way forward, instead she had this to say, and there's a translation. If we don't rise up and yell, wield weapons, fly flags, or perform haka, we mistakenly think we are ineffective as Māori. And mea whai hoariri tātou e Māori ai tātou, we must have an enemy to be Māori, is often our thinking. And she said, being Māori is not defined as having an enemy or merely as a challenge to overcome. If resistance is not the sole purpose of leadership, what is then? And she had this to say. Tāku Māoritanga kei roto i tāku kōrero Māori. Tāku Māoritanga kei roto i tāku tiaki i te taiao. Tāku Māoritanga kei roto i te pānui me te ako i aku hitoria. Tāku Māoritanga hoki. Being Māori is speaking our language. It's taking care of the environment. It's about learning and reading our history. That's what being Māori is about. It's the choice to be called by a Māori name. There are many ways to manifest being Māori, not just in times of protest. That's a really strong statement. It's a strong way of thinking. It's not to deride protest. It has its appropriate time and moment. But it's saying there's more. And this is also not an apolitical argument. These actions, according to her, will lead to mana motuhake and tino rangatiratanga in its fullness. These other ways of being, of living out ourselves as we were created to be, will lead to that flourishing for our people. It's a beautiful idea. The other way of flourishing she talked about was through unity, ko taitanga. As her father's key point was, kia ko tai ai te iwi Māori. We must be unified. She launched a Māori investment fund and invited everyone to an economic summit, Ohanga ki Tao, which she described as a chance to achieve our economic aspirations independently of government in our pursuit of self-determination, sustainable futures, and thriving peoples. And she said, independence, mana motuake, as she described it, is not just a word to me, it's my life. Powerful ideas in terms of flourishing and who we need to be as a people. There was a lot of kōrero leading up to this koho about a new generation, about where she might lead us. It's been the thought for the past year since she was first selected, since she was first presented to the people. As a Gen Xer, I hear a lot about getting out of the way. We're not quite boomers, but we also are in the way. We need to make way. And I don't think that's really our way of thinking. Our way of thinking is every generation has a purpose, has a part to play. We work together intergenerationally. Much of Te Arikinui's kōrero was about living out the legacy of her father. I can associate that with that personally. My father passed more than a decade ago, and yet I'm still fulfilling his to-do list one way or another. It never ends. And his to-do list came from the generation before him, and so on, effectively. He ngā atu he te kura, ara mai ana he te kura. The new frond comes from the old frond. There is nothing new, there's just a renewal of leadership. It was challenging in a beautiful way. Her whole kauhau was in te reo, it was beautiful reo. It was aspirational. It was saying that as a people, we need to embrace our reo. We need to use it publicly. We need to think in our own ways as well. And that was a beautiful moment. Again, a beautiful historical moment, recapturing really decades of lost reo in a lot of ways. It was also challenging that only 28% of Waikato Tainui can hold a conversation in te reo. That means effectively 72% of Waikato Tainui couldn't follow the speech in its fullness. Yes, they'll be informed as to parts of it. Yes, they'll be able to see parts that might be translated with subtitles. However, the people might not be fully on board with the beautiful, powerful hopes and dreams that she was sharing. Waikato Tainui has great aspirations for the reo heading towards 2050. But it's a challenge all the same. It was a challenge to us all to hold that standard of reo. It's a challenge in terms of bringing our people with us. There was a lot of grief present in this speech. There was a lot of vulnerability expressed by Te Arikinui. She felt safe enough before her people, before the many people, the many iwi gathered, to be vulnerable, to share her pain and her grief at the loss of her father. And that was a beautiful thing to experience. That's the way we should be. Our grieving should be public expressions of our love for those who have departed. And we shouldn't be afraid to do that. As she said, no tēnei Koroneihana nei ka ako nei ahau. Hei mate kai roto I te ora, hei oe anō, hei ora anō hoki kai roto I te mate. There is life within death, there is death within life. We shouldn't shy away from the things that make us sad or uncomfortable in our leadership. We should embrace them appropriately, and we should bring them with us wherever we go, as we do. Kia ora tātou.